Hi, Michelle. Welcome to my podcast.
Hello, Deb. Thanks for having
Thanks for being here. And I always think it's nice to know right in the beginning that you're here because you want to be here.
me. Yes,
So, like, I did not force you, I have not paid you.
correct.
Um, it's something that you wanted to do. I asked you.
Yep, all
Okay. Just
true.
so everybody knows,
Right,
whatever comes out of your mouth is just the way that you're thinking and feeling, and there's no pressure from me.
right.
Okay, everybody. So all my listeners know that. So I always have a first question to ask you. And I kind of know the answer, but I know our listeners don't. And that is you were listening to my podcast for a while. Is that right?
Yes.
What made you go from being a listener to the podcast to decide to set up a mini session and hire me? What was that about for you? Because I think that's one of the hardest parts for people when they're listeners.
Yes. I'd thought about it lots of times over the years, but I think the final thing was I listened to a more recent podcast, and there was something about I can't remember the exact wording, something about just giving this up once and for all, just letting the burden go, and
Mhm.
not having to think about this anymore. And wouldn't that feel so good? And I was just like, yes, that would feel so good. And I just kind of reached a point in my own life where I started to believe I deserve
Uh,
this. I deserve to feel better. And so it opened up the possibility in my mind of actually speaking with you.
because of what I actually said on a podcast one time about really being able to get rid of it.
Yeah, I think that was like the final, I don't
Wow.
remember exactly what it was, but I think that was the
Yeah.
final. I was like, oh, wouldn't that feel so good to just not have all this shame and guilt and all this stuff, about my body and food and I was like, yeah, that would feel great. How can I do that?
Ah, and why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about because you talked about shame and guilt, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. But what was that like for you, and how long was all of that going on?
Um, a
Mhm.
really long time. I would say I was a very serious ballet dancer as a
Yeah,
young girl and an early teenager. I would say probably since age 11 or 12, I was feeling the shame and the body shame and guilt. And then I started becoming very aware of what I was eating and, whether it was going to contribute to a skinnier body or whatever.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, so 40 years at least of
yeah.
feeling that way.
Wow, wow. And and I think what I hear you say is that the thing that made you decide to wanna talk to me was that you were sick of feeling that way for 40 years.
Absolutely. Yes.
And listening to and you were listening you've been lis like, how many years off and on were you listening to my
Um,
podcast? Because I think that's fascinating too.
yes, it probably started listening off and on. It seems like 2018 or 19. I don't remember the exact year, but it would have been around there. I mean, at least 5 years, I would say.
Yeah. Wow. And did you find that I mean, it must have resonated with you, which is why you were listening to it. And
Yeah.
did you find that, I guess, like, what was the difference, or why did you decide to hire me instead of just listen to me?
Because I wasn't applying your principles well enough, just
Okay.
listening. I had the intellectual, I understand this. This makes perfect sense. Somebody should do this. I should
Uh,
do that. But getting myself to actually do that, I wasn't succeeding very well.
uh-huh. But you tried off and on for 4 or
Yeah.
5 years, and the message kind of I would assume resonated with you, and you kept thinking that maybe you could do it.
Yes. And every time I would listen, I would think, okay, I'm going to apply that little tidbit, but I just wasn't, I wasn't intense enough probably for me to apply it. And understanding intellectually and applying are two totally different things. And I think I kind of came to that realization that I need more help. All my understanding is not making me make a change.
Mhm. Hmm. That makes sense. And just for our listeners, you didn't really want to lose. It wasn't that much weight. It isn't that much weight. How
Right.
much were we like talking about? Just so everybody knows, because some people are, everybody's got different amounts of weight to lose. And yet, what I want people to understand that it's really not the amount of weight that causes all of these
Right.
feelings.
Yeah, I would say at the time I was probably thinking, you know, my kind of number I was always going back to would have been 6 to 8 pounds away,
Hmm.
at the time. And beyond that, I could never have imagined achieving something beyond that because I could never have imagined starving myself well enough to sustain something less than that. So 6 to 8 pounds was probably what I was thinking
Hmm.
when we first spoke.
And it's coming back to me that I remember our first call. And I remember thinking to myself, because I think you told me that that was the number. And I was thinking, well, that's not that much.
Yeah.
And what I remember you saying is that that it really, I mean, you were calling me because of that number. I mean,
Hmm.
because that weight scared you and
Yes.
bothered you, and you were so frightened that it was going to go up.
Yes. That is really true. I spent a lot of time worrying about what would happen. I think I would lose my mind, like feeling just really afraid of, I mean, I'd been higher weight before,
Uh-huh.
but I knew I'm like, I'm getting older, a lot of things that you've said, it's not going to be any easier if I get up there to get back down. And
Mhm,
just knowing how I felt at other weights and the way I thought about myself, I was really afraid of that.
mhm. I think that's what got me the most was your fear of not being able to control this. I think,
Yeah.
and what that meant to you about weight and not being able to control it, how scary it was for you.
Yeah.
Mhm,
And it also was a fear of controlling, having better, I don't know, like the right way to say it, but I would find myself eating more compulsively, not large amounts or anything, but
mhm,
for the wrong reasons. And I knew it was the wrong reason and it was not going to suit me, but I did not feel like I had any good control over it. It just felt like it was controlling me. So food, fear over body shape and size and weight was just controlling me all the time.
even though it was 6 to 8 pounds. I just want
Yeah.
everybody to hear this because it could be 60 to 80 pounds. It doesn't really matter what the number of pounds is. What I want people to hear as you're explaining this, it's the thoughts and the feelings that everybody has the same, regardless of that number on the scale. And that is, I think, why you called me,
Yes.
because you
Really.
wanted to be free of that after 40 years.
Yes.
Okay.
For sure.
So we're going to get into this, but just cut to the chase. Do you think you're free of that now?
Yes, I do. I know that it's possible that I could have more of those negative thoughts. They could come
Sure.
back,
Yep.
but I feel like I know how to deal with them if they do. It's
Mhm.
not, I don't have the fear anymore.
Ah,
You know, I might gain a couple pounds. I might think, I might start thinking things about the scale or about how I look, but I know what to do with it. It doesn't scare me. It just seemed impossible before that I could ever think differently. And now it's totally possible and totally real.
wow. I hope everybody is hearing this because I feel like working with you is, and I think it's important for our listeners to hear this, is that I think the tools that I use work.
Mhm.
But I have to say that the person that I'm working with is the one that works it. And
Yeah.
and you are a perfect example to me, and I know I've told you this many time on our calls, is that you astounded me that you sounded like what I was trying to teach you. You were giving me back the language that I was teaching you, except that it was yours and you actually believed something totally different because you did the work that I gave you diligently.
Yeah. Yeah, you said that to me probably more than once, but I remember on our last call you said, because I was thanking you and you said, but you did the work. And I thought, that's true. I could have. had all my meetings with you and done nothing with it, you know.
You could have,
And I was like, "Hey, I did. I did do the work."
or you could have done some of the work,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you did all. I, there was never a time in my mailbox on anything that I ever gave you that went by the time I got on a call with you that that homework wasn't filled, assigned, and ready to go.
Right.
Why did you do it like that? What was going on inside of you that inspired you enough to do everything? When I say at 100%, I just mean that you put the work into whatever it was that I gave you at 100%.
Yeah.
What made you, what was inside of you that allowed you to be in that place?
I think it was just my devotion to myself at that
Yeah.
point, like to really fix this. And you had said in our first meeting, um, it's going to be hard. I'm going to ask you to do things and you need to do them. I don't remember your exact words, but I
Yeah,
was like,
something like that.
okay, yeah, I'm not going to cheat myself here. You know, I am going to do what it takes, even if I don't like it. I don't like writing down what I eat because it brought with it a lot of fear and, from history of writing down what I eat and looking at it. I
Yeah.
didn't want that, but I was like, I am gonna do it. And I'm just gonna trust that Deb knows what she's talking about. And I'm gonna give it my full effort because I want to make this change for real. So
So I think that thought right there that you just said, I want to make this change for real. I want to make it real for myself, and that you believed in me and you believed in yourself that you would do what I told you to do.
yeah, that's true. I didn't know yet if I didn't know if I'd be able to transform, but I knew I
Yeah.
could do what you told me to do, and I was just going to trust you there and just do it.
I love that. I got chills because that is what the transformation is all about.
Yeah.
Is that's why I say just do what I you don't have to do it perfectly. You just
Yeah.
have to do it. Because whatever I see that you need help on, the only way I'll know you need help is because you gave me something to look at,
Yes.
right? And you got to be willing to let me look at it so that I can help you.
Yeah. And every time I'd think, oh, I messed, I didn't do well in this, or I had
Yes,
this thought, or you would say, essentially, that's okay. This is great. We'll work on this, and it was encouraging instead of thinking, oh, I've messed something up or I'm not doing as well as I could. You would say, well, let's look at this. And it was always a positive experience in the long run to actually look at what the problem was.
I love that you say that because that is, the idea with coaching and especially food journaling and eating and getting your numbers down and all of the things that we did together takes a certain amount of transparency. And also, when you come to the table with shame and guilt and fear, which is what you came with, and I was asking you to put it all on paper,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think what I hear you saying and what I want others that are listening to this to hear is that that's probably where, the faith in me came in, that I
Mhm.
wasn't going to tear you down or do something
Right.
negative with this vulnerable information.
Right.
But the vulnerable information is what helped me help you see things more clearly and help you transform.
Absolutely. That's totally true. And I never thought, oh, she's going to berate me over this. And having listened to you, I knew that's not how you operated. But it's hard to be vulnerable. I mean, you know
I know.
that.
I know.
But I felt confident enough to do it, and it made such a difference. And yeah, it was funny because even when we're talking about things that had nothing to do with food,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, these things I could be honest with about them, and we made progress, and it just applied to all aspects of my life.
Probably say a little bit about that because I do talk about that a lot about that what you put in your mouth, that it's so much more than the food, but how and why you put food in your mouth is how and why you do a lot of things in your life.
Yes.
right? So I think that's what you're referring to is relationships, your job.
Yeah.
And I remember when on our first call on our mini session that all you could say to me over and over again, I'm so stressed.
Hmm.
I'm so stressed. I'm overwhelmed. And that is why I have this problem because I have
Yeah.
way too much stress in my life and I'm eating because of my stress, which is really the story that almost everybody gives me is it's the stress that's causing this.
Hmm.
What would you say about that now that you've been through it?
I would say it's the way I was thinking about the things in my life,
Uh-huh.
and that mattered. It didn't matter how much stress there was. It's what I thought about it that was making me feel the way I was feeling and then do the things I was doing.
And would you say that you feel less stressed than you did before we started working?
I do because I mean, I feel less stressed because I know how to handle the feeling of stress when it comes. It's not that my life has
I,
less potential stressors in it. There's just
that's
as
the
many.
point.
Yeah. But it's great because the stressor of thinking poorly about my body and my, and what to eat isn't really there anymore. Like that stressor has exited the scene. Every once in a while it'll come up.
Of
But
course.
otherwise, all the same stressors are there. I still have the same job, requires the same hours, the same kids and husband and life situation and everything else.
And that's really what I'm referring to is that I think your stress, the feeling of stress has decreased, even though your life is exactly the same.
Yeah. Yep. Totally.
And I think that's the point of all the work that this thinner peace process is of how you become at peace inside of yourself with what goes on around you,
Mhm.
which I feel like you're a shining example of that just by what we're talking about is that, hey, I feel so much less stress, but I have to tell you, my life is exactly I have all the same people in my life, same job, same boss, same everything. But I think the way that you feel about it and the way you treat yourself about it has changed immensely.
Exactly. It really, really has.
And would I would say one of the things that we talked about was that and interesting for other people to hear is that you wanted to be able to eat a joy food,
Hmm.
like a non-nutritious food. You wanted to be able to include that in your diet on a regular basis
Hmm.
without any negative emotion associated with it, which is a lot of the work that we did.
Yes.
So, would you say something about that? Because there's a lot of people listening that thinks that they can't have both.
Yes. So I was really adamant that it was in my own thinking that it was okay to enjoy food and it was
Yeah.
okay to enjoy non-nutritious foods, but I didn't have any confidence in managing that well, and doing it the right way. And I couldn't imagine enjoying a non-nutritious food without feeling this urge to just keep eating it.
Right.
And with a history of maybe restricting foods or good foods, bad foods, I was like, I don't want that in my life. I don't want to think of foods as good and bad. That was just really a trigger for me. So I didn't want to be like, I got to eliminate, I can only have a treat on this one day or whatever.
Yes.
I want to be able to enjoy it when I could.
Yes.
And that was a huge learning thing for me to find out that I could, I mean, I never feel, um, what's the word? I never feel deprived anymore. And I was really afraid of feeling deprived by saying, nope, can't have those things. I feel joyful over it. And sometimes if I like feel a craving or an urge, I just think, well, am I really going to enjoy that food right now? Or is this just an urge? And when it's just an urge, I just feel it and sit with it. And it's okay and it goes away and it doesn't eat at me the way my old feelings did.
Mhm.
So I've found that I enjoy joy foods whenever I feel like I can enjoy them. And it's great. It's great. I never thought that doing that, that wouldn't control me so much, like in a negative way. that the ideas of you can't have this and you shouldn't have that, that would stop controlling my thought patterns. And it totally has. I don't think that way anymore.
Wow. Wow. And I think for you, like the problem that you came in with wasn't so much about going over plus twos,
Right.
right? Because you have things going on in your body that almost you really can't do that. So
Yeah.
you've always kind of eaten between, at least not gone over twos too much because it hurts too much to do it.
Yes. Yeah.
So the biggest issue really was the feeling that you could eat whatever you wanted
Hmm.
and control what you were eating. And once you made a choice, that you were able to enjoy the choices that you made in a mindful way without overdoing it and without feeling like you wanted or needed to overdo it, like it was controlling you.
Yes. Totally. I remember you saying to me, if there was a food you could eat, you know, anytime or in any amount or something like that with no consequences or something. Don't remember the exact question. What would
Uh-huh.
it be? And I think I said chocolate, because I really like chocolate.
Uh-huh.
And eating a lot of chocolate all the time, just using it to try and manage my feelings. And you said, but would you really want to eat it all the time? And it was hard for me to think, well, right now I want to eat it all the time. It was hard for me to imagine something different. But the more I
Uh-huh.
thought about it, I was like, well, no, I mean, I like healthy foods. It's
That's
not like I would
right.
replace it. But just the idea that now I can eat a joy food whenever I want, I don't want to eat it all the time.
Which
Like
is
I,
which is such I mean, that is the idea,
yeah,
is that once you are not deprived or feel restricted anymore and you believe, and it's a belief that you can eat whatever you want. It's
yeah,
not like, and just because you have the belief, this is what I think I was saying, just because you have the belief and the thought that you can eat whatever you want doesn't mean you're going to go around eating chocolate all the time. But that's what your mind kind of tells you would happen,
yes,
right? That's why you always have to be on guard and feel restricted and deprived, because what would happen if you didn't have those feelings? You would be
exactly.
out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And now what you're saying is I know I can have it. I don't feel restricted and I don't feel deprived. And when you do have it, you actually enjoy it.
Absolutely.
And do
And
you oh, sorry.
oh,
Go
that's
ahead.
okay. And sometimes I've noticed I had something and I even enjoyed it, but maybe the next day I didn't feel very good. It was something that didn't sit well with my body or whatever.
Mhm.
And I don't, it makes me go, oh, I'm going to remember that next time. I really liked that, but I don't feel compelled to eat it just because I like it. Like, if it's not serving my body very well, like making me feel unwell, then I'm like, I won't do that next time. I'll find something else I actually really like. Whereas before that, all the joy foods or the non-nutritious foods just seem to control my thoughts.
Mhm. You thought they were controlling you as opposed to you controlling it.
Exactly.
Yes, that's how you came to the table, so to speak.
Yep.
Right. And the smile on your face that I see right now is because you don't think that anymore.
Yeah.
You are free.
Yes. And it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for myself, when I'm talking to you after going through the process and see your smile and feel that, it's so warming to my heart because I know where you were at
Mhm.
and I know how scared you were. And to see to watch your process through these 12 sessions, to watch your process and your progress. You would, and it's like every single call that we had, you always brought me to what the problem was for the week. You always could pinpoint it. You could bring me right to this is what happened. And, if we were doing thought work, like trying to manage your mind or your thoughts around a person, or if it was a food or your whoever it was, it usually something about the food brought up a person and,
Yeah.
and brought up a situation
Yeah.
that has been with you for years.
Yes. Yep.
And it's almost like you became more free of all the thoughts that were creating this negativity, and it wasn't ever the person or the relationship or the situation. It was just you, which is what you said in the beginning. It was just your perception.
Yeah. And that's it's so amazing to like see the transformation in myself.
Yeah.
And looking back, like, that old self had no concept that I could think a different way. I just couldn't have imagined letting go of some of that way of thinking. And it is like it's still all the time I'm like, wow, I can totally think differently about this. And when we would talk about people and um, do models around people and what I was thinking about people, I've just been able to think totally differently. I still struggle with some of those things,
Of course.
but I say to myself, no big surprise. Let's think about this. I'm just a lot more curious. So it's yeah. It's been a huge thing for me is being more curious.
I love that. More curious and less furious,
Yes. Yeah.
which is one of my podcasts, which is one of the
Yeah.
name of one of my podcasts. But it's really true when you say that we bring up that you are able to bring up the feeling of curiosity instead of anger and being furious at yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're not as hard on yourself.
Yeah.
You're more loving to yourself like you are to your children and to your husband,
Yeah.
because I don't think there was ever a problem there,
Right.
right? Like no problem loving them and doing what was best for them, but you couldn't quite do the same thing for yourself that you were doing for them, which I think you do now.
Yes. Definitely.
And it's like I think our family, our uh, spouses, children are probably our best teachers for helping us see ourselves a little bit more clearly. Would you
Oh
agree?
yeah. Totally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So as we're getting ready to end the podcast, it was an investment for you in the
Mhm.
beginning when we talked, and I think you were wavering back and forth about, do I really want to invest that much money in myself or not? What made you make decide in favor of investing that amount of money into yourself? And what would you say to somebody else who's listening, who is where you were?
Mhm.
What would you say to them?
Um, I had I had thoughts like I'm not worth it. I don't deserve to spend that money. Like I should be using that in a different way that's not just for me. I had all kinds of thoughts like that.
Like, I should be using it for my family or my kids in school, or I hear
Yeah.
that all the time.
Yeah. Or gosh, how selfish of me, regardless of who else might need it. Like
Oh,
that's kind of selfish for me to want to spend that much money on just me. And what if it doesn't work? And like all that.
uh-huh.
I definitely had the support of my husband. And he was like, if this makes you feel better and makes you stop carrying around this weight, it's worth every penny.
Wow.
So that was really helpful. But
Wow.
honestly, even him saying that, it's not like he's the one who called you and said,
No,
here's the
he
money,
did not.
Deb, let's sign Michelle up.
That's right.
I had to do it.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of courage, honestly,
Yeah.
to do that. But I just kind of told myself, okay, you are worth it. Like you've got to solve this problem in your life. And I kind of just believed the idea that um, if I could drop that burden, it would be worth every penny and more. So I think that's probably what pushed me over the edge between the support of my husband and me kind of taking the way he was thinking about me and applying it to myself and just saying, yeah, maybe there's some truth to that. It's worth it. I've got to just try.
Mhm. Was it worth it?
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I love what you say about it took a lot of courage. I think that's probably the biggest thing. I think it's really scary to do that for yourself and invest in yourself when you really don't know what the outcome is.
Right.
I think that's probably where everybody is like, well, what if, just like you said, well, what if it doesn't work?
Right.
Well, tell me what it's like that it did work, because that's the other side of the question. What if it does work? What's it
Right.
like
Yeah.
now that it worked? Because
Yeah.
you took the courage and the bravery and did it, and it worked.
What it's like now is, and I don't mean this in a regretful way, but like, wow, I should have done this 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's absolutely no questions asked. It
Mm,
was worth it. And if I could go to my younger self, I would do it
mhm,
to take away time that could have been spent and energy that could have been spent doing something more productive
mhm,
all those years, having more positive thoughts and feelings all those years. I
mhm.
could have done that. And I don't mean that like, gosh, what a waste my life has been. I don't
Yeah,
feel that way. But I do think, man, if I could tell my younger self, I would do it all over again.
yeah. I love that, but I also what I believe is that your younger self got you here
Yeah.
just the way that she was supposed to get you here.
Thank you.
Well, I do believe that, and I also understand what you're saying and what you're telling our listeners is that don't hesitate.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't wait to get older.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
wait another year,
exactly.
I think is a good way to put it. But, I think we go through what we go through because that's what gets us to wherever it is that we are.
I think that too. Like it's our learning, like we have to learn our lessons
That's right.
somehow, and that's how I learned mine. And that's why I think I can say I don't have regret,
Yes, I understand.
but yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I agree with myself too, and I understand what you're saying, but I just want everybody to hear, what you're saying and realizing that the possibility is available.
Hmm.
And you're a perfect example of what that looks like. And I so appreciate you coming on and being vulnerable again and shedding a few tears. But I know it's going to be so appreciated by our community. And I have to tell you that I loved every single minute of working with you. And I think I learned as much from you
Wow.
about what it takes to be committed to yourself
Mm.
because you showed me 100% commitment to yourself. I gave you the tools and you said, I want you to watch me go.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what you did. And I know that that's available to anybody that's listening. You carried this burden for 40 years. I know there's a lot of people out there. I carried it that long,
Yeah.
but I also know you can drop it.
Yes.
So, my darling, thank you so much for being here and being so vulnerable and honest. And I hope we get to talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Deb. I appreciate it all more than you know, and it feels so great.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you.